And so the last bill on our agenda, I hope the members will appreciate I'm trying to be expedited so that we can have plenty of time for this bill. There are quite a few people from the public that have signed up to speak on the bill. So the chair wants to try to reserve as much time as possible for to hear those comments. So at this time, we have before us House Bill 808, gender transition related to minors. And Senator Krawiec is here to explain the bill. There is one amendment. Senator Krawiec, would you be okay with going ahead and hearing the amendment first before we start with the bill?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Sanderson moves to amend the bill. Chair recognizes Senator Sanderson to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment changes two dates in the current bill on page 3, line 19 by switching that from October to August. And on page 4, line 48, the same change. And that's the amendment now.
Okay. Questions from the committee members as to the amendment? Senator Marcus is recognized.
Yes, please. Does it delay the implementation of this terrible bill?
Who would you like to answer that?
Whoever's running, whoever
Senator
can answer that
Sanderson?
question, Sanderson or Krawiec? Does it delay the implementation of this terrible bill? If so, I'm in favor.
The chair can answer that. It does not. It actually implements the bill sooner.
Oops, okay.
Further questions, comments from the committee? All those in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The bill is amended, is back before us. Senator Krawiec, welcome to Judiciary. You are recognized to explain the bill.
I must admit to you, as Judiciary Chair, nothing makes me more nervous than being surrounded by lawyers. So, but I'm happy to be here. Thank you all for having me. Mr. Chairman, there's been a tremendous increase in gender-affirming care. In fact, transitioning has doubled between 2017 and 2021. The state has an interest in protecting our citizens. The drugs that are being used during the transitioning process for gender-affirming care are not FDA approved for that purpose. They're typically drugs that are used to treat cancer patients, so we have no idea what those long-term effects are going to be on our young people. I'm just going to explain the section pertaining to the judiciary. This would prohibit medical professionals from performing surgical gender transition procedures on minors and prescribing, providing, or dispensing puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones to minors, and there are exceptions. There are a long list of exceptions, and I'll be glad to go into those if you'd like. Medical professionals who violate these provisions would have their license revoked. Minors who underwent a surgical transition procedure or who were prescribed or provided puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones would have a private right of action against the medical provider who performed the procedure or prescribed or provided the drugs. State funds could not be used for surgical gender transition procedures on minors and prescribing, providing, or dispensing puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones to minors. Medical professionals who do not comply with the provisions of this act would be deemed to have engaged in unprofessional conduct, and therefore their license would be revoked. A minor who suffered harm from a surgical gender transition procedure or treatment with puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones would be able to recover damages from the medical professional and the entity employing or contracting with the professional who performed the procedure or prescribed or supplied the puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones. The action for damages could be commenced any time up until 25 years after the minor turned 18, and the damage cap for medical malpractice actions would not apply. And Mr. Chairman, I'd appreciate support from the committee.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you very much. Are there questions for the bill sponsor from the committee? Senator Grafstein.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Krawiec. And it makes me nervous to be surrounded by lawyers, too, so you're not alone in that. But I don't, and certainly there are enough lawyers here to answer legal questions, I'm sure, if you want to phone a friend. But going through the bill, there are a number of places, particularly around the issue of we're here to talk about the effect on the aspect related to the medical profession. And the first piece that caught my eye is the definition of gender reassignment surgery that's being prohibited in the bill. It talks about it being improper for services that seek to surgically alter particular physical or anatomical characteristics in order to essentially engage in transition. So, for example, when you have some women undergo mastectomies for various reasons, that's okay under this bill. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Follow up?
Yes, please. But it's also permissible in North Carolina for underage girls to have breast augmentation and other kinds of cosmetic surgery. Is that correct?
Breast reduction Chairman. Breast reduction procedures when necessary to remedy a physical disorder in a female patient. Yes.
Follow up?
Yes, please. But that's
Okay.
permissible.
And Senator,
Yes,
just because I want to
yeah.
hang on just a second, and just because I want to keep this moving along, if you could I want to make sure others have a chance to speak. And Senator Marcus may have questions, I know, and others. So I want everybody to have a chance. Okay.
No, I appreciate that, and
You're recognized.
And I do want to. I appreciate saving time for public comment.
You're recognized.
So I'll transition some of this just into kind of comments. But the bill does not prevent things that happen now, where young girls can actually have plastic surgery, breast augmentation. That's that kind of thing we allow to go on, and for parents to approve that. So this would be dependent only on what the purpose of that kind of surgery is, or the gender of the person getting the surgery, is as I understand it.
That wouldn't change that would not change what young women are going through today. The surgeries that they are going through now would still be allowed.
Okay. And the
Follow up?
Thank you. The follow up. The point about that and some of these pieces is it really just this flat discrimination based on gender, because a young girl can get breast augmentation, but a trans girl could not get breast augmentation.
Is that a question?
Well, I guess I'll put it in the form of a statement since we're being moved along.
Yeah.
The other pieces that I think are critical here is, we heard from a young woman. I was not here, but I listened in to Health yesterday, who told really a sad story about having had medical procedures that did not pan out to be in her best interest or what she wanted in the long term. And under North Carolina law, we have a malpractice process when doctors do things that they shouldn't do. And if what she described is verified through whatever process, and we find out who the doctor is, there's a malpractice issue there. So my concern about what we're doing here is that we're taking this out of the context of an established process where, in order to bring that kind of claim, you have to have another doctor practicing in the same field who says the standard of care was not met here. So this really upends the way we've done malpractice in this state for decades. So that's a concern about it. I guess the next issue I want to get to is the remedies piece of this, the remedies piece of it that does relate to doctors. There are penalties on doctors, and I want to find out from you if this is an intended consequence or not. The way the penalties are set out, it's the medical professional who performs any of these procedures or any entity that employs or contracts with that medical professional. In North Carolina, that would include the insurance company. It would include Medicaid. So all these entities would be on the hook for a claim if somebody's sued over one of these procedures. Is that what the bill sponsors intend?
Senator, do you want to answer that, or do you want staff to answer that?
I would refer that to staff, please.
Okay, thank you. Jason, can you answer that question for us?
Yes, Jason Moran Bates, Legislative Analysis. I can't speak as to the intent of the bill, but in the civil remedies section it does say that any entity that employs or contracts with the medical professional who performs one of the procedures or supplies one of the drugs would be liable.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. Senator Overcash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clarify, listening to that last line of questioning, and if staff could confirm this for me, breast augmentation is not permitted in North Carolina, regardless of parental consent or withholding parental consent, until the age of 18. Can staff confirm that for us, please?
Jason?
Jason Moran Bates, Legislative Analysis. Unfortunately, Senator Overcash, I don't know. I don't have an answer on that question.
Thank you, Jason. Is there anybody else from staff that might be able to answer that question? Okay. Well, we can get the answer to that question, Senator. Did you have a follow-up?
I do not, but I'm confident staff will be able to confirm that.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Avcash. All right, I'm going to come back to Senator Grafstein, but before I do, I want to see if there's anyone else. Senator Marcus, I see your finger poised. Senator Marcus is recognized.
Yes, and I would just say that I'm not in any way trying to rush Senator Grafstein through her questions. I think they're valid, and we should take time for those as well. But since I'm being recognized, I would like to speak not about my opinions on this bill, and I have many, but instead to share with you the story of a family who lives in my district who is terrified to hear that you are moving this bill forward. Their names are Joshua and Amanda Dumas, live in my district, and they need to continue gender-affirming care for their son, a transgender boy. They do not want to have to uproot their entire family in order to flee from your determination to override his doctor's advice, his wishes, and their decisions as a family about his future. I want to tell you about their son. This is a letter from them. I'm not going to read you the whole thing because I know we're being moved along, but I'm going to read you part of it. Our son is 12. He has lived as his authentic self since before he was 5. He led the way for our family, pushing against gender norms like his haircut, the clothes he wore, and what activities he wanted to do. While his toddler years were full of tantrums and behavior issues, nearly all of them went away when we allowed him to be himself. It wasn't easy for us as parents. We second-guessed ourselves at every turn, and it was only with the guidance of licensed professionals, doctors, counselors, therapists, and educators that we were able to find a way as a family. Note, they never mentioned a need for advice from politicians in the North Carolina General Assembly. They go on to say as he grew older, he was constantly afraid of his body developing. At first, he just assumed he would look like his dad, but when he learned that would not be the case, he began to stress a great deal. Our pediatrician helped us determine a plan, and when the first signs of puberty arrived, we were able to start puberty blockers. They go on to mention about how their son is doing so well now. He's confident, a natural leader. They're looking forward to his future. And they ask you to please not make his life harder and to stop attacking the trans community with bills like this one. You're not a doctor. You're not his parent. You're not an expert. And this bill is completely, outrageously bad for North Carolina.
Thank you, Senator Grafstein. We appreciate it. Senator Marcus. Senator Batch is recognized. I'll come back to you, Senator, I promise. Okay, I just want to give others a chance.
So based on the earlier line of questioning, I just had a follow-up for Jason with regards to the, Marin, with regards to the actual contract provisions. If you could clarify, in this situation with regards to civil liabilities, does that also mean that if a doctor is paneled with, let's say, Blue Cross Blue Shield or any other insurance company, or if a hospital, of course, gives the ability for a doctor to have have privileges at that hospital, does that mean that in a lawsuit with civil liabilities that the person can then sue the hospital, can also sue the insurance company, and can also sue the doctor or anyone else that contracts with the doctor?
Thank you, Senator. Jason, can you answer that?
Jason Moran Bates, Legislative Analysis. All I can say is that the bill does allow liability for any entity that is under contract with the doctor. It would be up to the courts to determine the exact scope of that. But the exact language in the bill is page 3, and we're looking at lines 48 and 49. There's liability for an entity that employs or contracts with a medical professional who performs a surgical gender transition procedure on a minor, or who prescribes, provides, or dispenses puberty-blocking drugs or cross-sex hormones to a minor. So it doesn't flesh that out, but that is the exact language in the bill.
Yes. Senator? Okay. Senator Grafstein?
Thanks. Yeah, just really quickly, I do want to get to public comment as well. So just to follow up on that, there was a case out of, two things. One is under state law, I think under federal law, any medical provider who accepts Medicaid has to sign a contract with the state to accept Medicaid and meet certain parameters. And one of those includes not discriminating under various provisions of federal law, including anti-discrimination provisions. So we will see providers who have to decide whether they're going to keep taking Medicaid or not because there's going to be a conflict between this statute and Medicaid law. And what we don't need in the state, as you know, Senator Kravic, are fewer doctors taking Medicaid. But that also, I just would conclude with a case out of Florida yesterday there was one just a few days ago from Arkansas finding that one of these bans, and these are national bans, one of these bans violates federal law. There's another case out of Florida last night overturning a state law ban on using Medicaid funds for gender-affirming care. So we're, as I think Senator Mayfield pointed out yesterday, we're just teeing up litigation, and I think it's just not the right path for us. So appreciate the time.
Thank you, Senator. Other comments or
Mr.
questions?
Chairman,
Yes.
could I respond?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted
Senator
to follow
Craywick,
up.
you recognized.
Thank you. I just wanted to follow up with Senator Marcus's comments. That family, it appears their son is already in the transitioning process. They will be able to continue. They will. That's in the bill. They won't have to move to another state to continue that process.
Senator Batch?
Thank you for that clarification. But to be clear then, anyone based on the new amendment from August moving forward, Senator Krawick, will not be able to access that care ever. So children in the future will not have access to that care, correct?
Correct.
I can answer that. The children will not be able to access it, but once they turn 18, they will.
Okay.
Senator Batch, follow up?
Yeah, that was clarifying, just to make sure that we're making a distinction that children who are receiving the care can continue.
Yes.
But any children that are in a situation in which they would like to receive that care, and their parents, to be clear, again, and I stated this in health yesterday, is that, we find ourselves in a position once again of we have fought for and discussed the right for parents to be able to make decisions for their children. And in one hand, we say, you should make all these decisions. And we have a Parents' Bill of Rights that has moved through this chamber. But yet, on the other hand, we don't trust parents to make the decisions with regards to their kids. Children, time and time again, especially with regards to trans children, the ones that we were talking about, disproportionately commit suicide. And there's tons of data that says that when they have access to this care, the chances of them committing suicide decrease by more than 50%. We are in a state where we say we care about children, where we say that we want to stop the ongoing issues with regards to mental health in our children. We are putting $1 billion in this state into mental health treatment. And yet we are going to need every single dollar or more in order to protect the children that this bill will harm. Children will die because of this bill. And so I'm making a distinction, and I appreciate that children who are continuing to receive that care will be able to do it. But there are tons of children that are going to come after that are likely going to kill themselves or have significant mental health issues because of it.
Thank you, Senator Batch. Are there further comments or questions from the committee members? Senator Grafstein? Yeah, you look like you had your hand ready. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be fair here and spread it around.
No, Mr. Chair, my reaction was really just to the laughter at what Senator Batch was saying. I don't think it was appropriate.
Well, I'm sorry for laughing about specious studies that are easily argued against, and so that's Senator Batch's opinion, and I have mine, and I can express mine too. So thank you for that. Thank you, Senator Batch.
Can
Yes.
I be acknowledged?
Question or comment?
Yes. So the studies that I'm actually talking about are from national journals and medical journals and from psychologists, of which I am more than happy to provide for you and for anyone else that would like to see those. They are not specious.
Thank you for your opinion. We appreciate that. Are there further comments or questions from the committee? Okay, we want to have some time for the public, and we're running short, and so I'm going to try to move this along. Members of the public that have signed up, please keep your comments to no more than 2 minutes. I'm going to read off several names at a time. If you would please queue up so we can keep moving along. First, I'm going to recognize Prisha Mosley. And then I'm going to recognize Kyle Love. Then I'm going to recognize Ellie Isley. And we'll keep moving as quickly as we can. So please state your name and who you're with, and Prisha, you're recognized. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Prisha Mosley. I am a woman who has suffered severe and lasting injuries caused by gender-affirming care as a minor in North Carolina. This care included the medical intervention to make my body appear as that of a male. The standard of care has been wrong before. Lobotomies were once the best accepted medicine. Gender-affirming care causes permanent chemical sterilization followed by surgical sterilization. The suicide rate is higher after transition. As a teenager, I suffered from a number of mental health health issues, including OCD, borderline personality disorder, anxiety, and depression. I also suffered trauma from a sexual assault at 14, a year before I adopted a trans identity. I also engaged in self-harm. At 17, after meeting with me for a matter of minutes, a counselor told me that I was actually a boy and that changing my body to be more like a boy's would fix my mental health issues. At the same time, a pediatric endocrinologist prescribed me testosterone. While I was in the room, my doctors asked my parents if they would rather have a dead daughter or a living son. My parents' care for me was manipulated against them, and their love was used to bait and blackmail them. Consent was stolen from them, and no parent has the right to sterilize their child, even if they want to. While I was still 17, a surgeon familiar with breast reduction surgery for women met with me and expressed eagerness in performing top surgery on me. At 18, my healthy breasts were cut off and incinerated. I have suffered injuries that are both psychological and physical in nature. My body did not develop the way it should have and does not function normally. I am unable to nurse a child, even if I get breast reconstruction, and I don't know if I will ever be able to conceive. I have painful and irreversible changes to my genitals, including severe vaginal atrophy, which is common and prevent me from using tampons. My voice has been permanently damaged. My muscles and my bones ache. I was promised male puberty, and instead I got menopause. I may not ever be able to have children.
Thank you, Prisha. Next, we recognize Kyle Love.
Thank you. My name is Kyle Warren Love. I am here to speak against House Bill 808. I grew up in Prospect Hill in Caswell County, and I am proud to call it my home today. I am proud to be an out transgender man living and thriving in rural North Carolina. The bill before you today and similar bills have been debated in multiple committees over the past couple of weeks, and just this week in a courtroom in Arkansas, a judge said it violates federal law based on the medical science supporting these treatments. It violates federal law to ban health care that improves mental health for children. It violates, and in this case, LGBTQ people. It violates federal law to ban health care for a specific group of people, in this case, LGBTQ people. The people that I know in my home state don't want a government that damages the mental health of our children and our neighbors' children by blocking access to scientifically supported health care. I know in North Carolina, we especially don't want a government that passes laws that will waste our taxpayer money in litigation just to be struck down in courts. It is struck down because the benefits of this health care are too great to ignore. We just want to support each other and be there for each other and be able to live our lives. I am here today because I cannot stand silently by while our government damages the access to health care for our children, wastes our taxpayer dollars on litigation by passing laws that will be struck down, and uses your representative vote in a way that does not represent the North Carolina I know. Your vote matters. I hope you choose to use your vote to give care, show love, and support health care for LGBTQ children in this state by voting against this bill. Votes matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Chair recognizes Ellie Isley, and after that, Tammy Fitzgerald, and then Dana Derelak, I think I'm saying that right. Okay. So Tammy Fitzgerald, Dana Derelak. I'm sorry.
My name is
You're
Ellie.
recognized, Ellie. I'm sorry.
You're fine. My name is Ellie. I'm a trans woman. And I am actually receiving that care now. I had to wait until I was 18. I didn't even get it until I was 32 because of laws like this and sentiment like this being pushed in the 90s and the 2000s when I was in high school. I was pushed back into the closet by these exact sentiments. I'm not hiding anymore. None of us are. The last time this happened, and I don't know how much history any of y'all remember of this, the last time this happened was in 1930s and 40s, and it was Nazi Germany, and they outlawed us, they burned our books, and they killed our people. Today, you are starting that process, and I will not sit by and let that happen.
Thank you. Tammy Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tammy Fitzgerald speaking on behalf of Walt Heyer, a North Carolina resident who is a detransitioned man. My name is Walt Heyer, and I'm asking you to support the protection of minors from puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries that remove healthy body parts. Chemical and surgical castration is not health care. I lived 8 years as a female named Laura Jensen after undergoing reassignment surgery 40 years ago in 1983. I have since worked with hundreds of people over the last 10 years who have been hurt by the gender reassignment industry. As someone who identified as transgender and went through the medical so-called transition process, I bring 78 years of firsthand experience to the table. Over the years, I have written several books on the topic and now run the website sexchangeregret.com. For me, my transgender story began at 4 years old. Later in life, I went to a gender therapist, Dr. Paul Walker, who told me that the only way to overcome my distress was to undergo hormone treatments and reassignment surgery. Dr. Walker was recognized as the top gender therapist in the country at that time. I now travel the world telling my story because Dr. Walker was wrong. To a person undergoing gender transition, in the beginning it feels like the right thing to do. But then I realized the high cost of that tenuous piece, identifying as female, required destroying the identity of Walt. So my female persona, Laura, would feel unshackled from Walt's past and all of its hurt, shame, and abuse. It's a marvelous distraction for a while, but it isn't a permanent solution when the underlying issue remains unaddressed. Medical intervention for what is a psychological issue is a Band-Aid that permanently harms a person, especially a young person. We need to start actually helping these young people. I ask every person who comes to me for help, when did you stop wanting to be who you are? 100% of them give me an answer. When they tell me their stories, I weep with them. Their stories are often so deep and hurtful that nobody wants to talk about it. But we need to start talking about it. People are saying that these interventions are needed to help prevent suicide, but oftentimes the procedure themselves cause the suicide. It's insane.
Thank you, Tammy. Next, we're going to hear from Dana Derlach, and then after that, we're going to hear from Mark Creech and Catherine Maddox.
Good morning. My name's Dana. I live in Mooresville, just outside of Charlotte, and my child is 12. Much like the child that this lovely lady spoke about earlier, my child is gender nonconforming and is not currently on any type of blockers or anything like that. Over the last year, since our child expressed this to us, our family has gone to all kinds of professionals. We've gone to counselors, we've gone to doctors, and basically, this is not an easy thing for any family to navigate. No matter what the decisions a family makes, I can tell you that no family is doing so gleefully. It is heartbreaking and scary as a parent to take on these choices. And I believe that parents do what they feel is best for their child. I know I have. And after much research and things like that, my child is just in the beginning of their identity journey, whether that's, figuring out their gender identity, whether that's figuring out what they want to do with their life. And for us, knowing that gender affirming care could be their lifeline in the next 5 or 6 years as they go through puberty is vital. We need to have that option. If my child is not already under the care, we are that family that is going to have to move to another state. We are going to have to leave our jobs. We are going to have to take our children from all they've ever known and go to another state that recognizes our child's rights to health care. And I'm just asking you to vote against this bill. It's harmful and it is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Reverend Creech, and then, as I said, Catherine Maddox will be after Mark Creech, and then following Catherine would be Jer Royal. Reverend Creech.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'm Reverend Mark Creech, Executive Director of the Christian Action League. We believe that House Bill 808 is necessary for protecting the well-being of young people. Undergoing such procedures is a serious and irreversible decision that should only be made by mature individuals who understand better the implications of their choice. Minors lack the emotional, cognitive, and social maturity to understand the consequences of such procedures fully. It seems absurd that we don't permit minors by law, with or without parental guidance and permission, to smoke or use tobacco products, drink alcohol, use recreational drugs, gamble, engage in sex with an adult, watch certain forms of entertainment, all of which may negatively impact a minor's health. Nevertheless, some would argue, even implore, children should be allowed to do something much more consequential, make the incredibly momentous decision to alter their gender surgically, an act which would unquestionably pose significant risks to their physical and mental health, including complications from the surgery, hormonal imbalance, and an increased risk of developing mental health issues such as depression and suicidal ideation throughout a lifetime. I would, if you would permit me, like to share a Bible verse that undergirds the basic principle behind this legislation. I am paraphrasing it, but its truth remains intact. The Apostle Paul wrote, "When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child, but when I grew up, I put away childish things. As a child, I couldn't see things clearly, but when I became an adult, I began to see things with greater clarity." Let's let children be children, not miniature adults with full-size problems. We commend the bill to you.
Thank you, sir. Catherine Maddox. Then Jerry Royal. Ms. Maddox.
My name is Catherine Maddox. I'm a constituent of Wake County. I was born and raised in Raleigh. I'm here in opposition to House Bill 808. As a woman and survivor of sexual violence who has been pregnant through rape, I care strongly about bodily autonomy and opine that the causes of women and transgender people are inextricably entwined. 20 years ago, I lived for a year in a convent with the Episcopal Sisters of the Transfiguration. Part of their outreach was to a parish where a number of transgender women worshiped. I was assigned to assist there, and this was my first experience being among trans women. We shared girl talk over coffee hour, we discussed spirituality and the Bible, but most importantly for me, we worshiped together. And I heard the way they prayed to God and the way they talked to Jesus under their breath. This has forever changed me. From this experience, there is no doubt in my mind that being trans is how they were made in the image of likeness of God. That being trans is something trans people cannot change about themselves. And that we who have the means should support trans people in their right to make decisions about their bodies and life-saving medical interventions without interference. I ask you to please vote against House Bill 808. I'd also like to mention that minors who become pregnant with their parents' consent can have an abortion. Thank you.
Go ahead, sir, please.
Sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Jerry Royal. I'm counsel for the North Carolina Family Policy Council, and we encourage you to vote for House Bill 808. Children with gender dysphoria certainly need our compassion and understanding and help. Medical evidence, however, does not support today's protocols for so-called treatments for gender-confused youth. The procedures currently being used, including experimental puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries to remove healthy body parts, come with a myriad of negative side effects, which can include irreversible body changes, sterility, and mental illness. Sadly, these outcomes are often permanent. The American College of Pediatricians states, there is not a single long-term study to demonstrate the safety or efficacy of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries for transgender-believing youth. Moreover, The best long-term evidence we have among adults shows that medical intervention fails to reduce suicide. For these reasons, we urge you to protect our children from the permanent harm that these procedures can bring by supporting House Bill 808. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And then last, I think, on time, we'll have Sebastian King.
Sir, I was on the list. I was at number 3. You never called me. I was on the list. I got here early.
It's okay. May I understand your name?
Bosco, number 3.
Did I accidentally skip you? Okay, I apologize. If the committee members will, it was not intentional. If the committee member, there's a lot of people on the list. If the committee will indulge, we'll hang over for a few minutes. We'll hear from you first, Mr. King. Will you please let Evelyn speak, and then we'll recognize Mr. King, and then we'll conclude our committee. I apologize. You're recognized.
Thank you. My name is Evelyn. I am a 40-year-old American woman. Another fun fact is that I am transgender. I was born in 1983. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, I had no idea that trans people existed, but I did know by the age of 6 that I was a girl. My puberty felt like a horror movie. Voice deepening, body hair growing. At 15, I learned trans people existed. At 16, I came out in the year 2000, and I was coerced by counselors into not transitioning. By 20, I was suicidal. I had spent my life isolating myself. I got a full-time, well-paying job, and I spent all of my days working and spending my evenings in a drunken haze, investing myself in books where I could imagine that I was a woman. At 30, I finally felt safe enough and supported enough to transition, and I now live happily as a woman with a family, pets, a home, and a good job. But I lost decades. I carry the scars from my male puberty. I had nearly 20 years worth of testosterone effects on my body. I've been doing years of vocal training to deal with the changes to my larynx. I've had 80 hours and counting of laser hair removal and electrolysis on my whole body. I've spent over $30,000 on gender-affirming treatments to reverse what happened from my male puberty. This all could have been prevented with proper gender-affirming care. Unlike others, I don't blame the coercion I faced for my male puberty, but I also didn't have a choice. All we're asking for is that you give trans children and their families a choice. A 2021 study in the National Library of Medicine show regret rates for gender-affirming surgeries are 1%. In January 2023, a study of 2,000 individuals who had undergone sex reassignment surgery, only 0.3% had requested a reversal or detransitioned. Of most detransitioners, the reasons cited are that the way they are treated makes it too difficult for them to continue living as their trans identity. All trans kids want is the opportunity that I didn't have. I lost years and years, decades of my life, and you can prevent that. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn. And again, I apologize. The chair apologizes for skipping over you. Chair recognizes Sebastian King. That'll be our last comment, and then we have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sebastian King, North Carolina Values Coalition. This bill is one of the most important bills being considered this session. If enacted, it would protect countless minors in North Carolina, stopping the medical and surgical castration of our children. We also know that there is a strong correlation between mental health issues and gender dysmorphia. In a 2017 study, researchers found 80% of gender dysmorphia patients had some form of prior outpatient assessment for psychological problems. 22% had been inpatients. 54% have been on medication. 36% had self-harmed, and 62% had suicide ideation. This treatment is not standard care, but experimental care. The puberty blockers used for gender dysmorphia have not been approved by the FDA, as Senator Krawick shared, for gender dysmorphia. Until recently, these drugs affect both bone development was unknown until April 1st, 2023. There's a reason other countries in Europe have already experimented with this and decided that's not right for their countries. England has turned away from doing this. In the fall of 2022, England's National Health Service banned puberty blockers for children outside strict clinical trials and advised against social transitioning for children. Sweden, the first country to authorize legal gender transition, is now rolling back the availability for treatments, claiming the risk outweighs the benefits. North Carolina should continue to protect their children in North Carolina and pass House Bill 808. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion before us from Senator Daniel for favorable report as to House Bill H. 808 as amended, rolled into new PCS, unfavorable as to the original bill, with a referral to Senate rules. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.